Hello, everybody. Welcome back to High Vibing It. We are so excited and thrilled to have you here on today's episode. I'm really excited because I've been dying to get an astrologer on the show. I've been like, Lindsay, we got to talk to an astrologer. I need to know about the Age of Aquarius. I need to know what's going on during these crazy, prevalent times. And I'm really excited to introduce Miss Heidi Rose Robins, who is an astrologer, a poet, a speaker, and she also has two amazing podcasts. One is called The Radiance Project, and the other is called Chart Your Career. So, Heidi, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to
Hello.
be here with you guys. Hello.
Okay, so I think this is so divine timing and, synchronistic and everything, because it's true. Kelsey has been like, we need to get another astrologer. We did have one before, as I mentioned, but it was so long ago. It was more about the pandemic and like what's going to happen and like how is this going to go down kind of thing. And it was so early on that everybody was still, we kind of still are, but it's really nice to have you to get like an updated, fresh perspective because, we're still going through it. And I know there's some personal things that probably a lot of our audience are wondering about that I know like happens in every episode. You're going to say exactly what people need to hear so that they can feel a little bit, hopefully more centered and have more clarity about where they stand and things like that. So before we get into all of that lovely, yummy stuff, I really want to know kind of how you started. I always ask the origin story because it's so fascinating to me how we go from who we were to who we are. And I know we're always evolving. So I'd love to hear that from you.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I have an interesting origin story. I guess I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, believe it or not. And my dad was an astrologer in Fargo, North Dakota, and had a metaphysical bookstore. And
oh my God, this sounds like my dream. If my parents had a metaphysical bookstore, I would just stay there all the time.
Well, we were definitely the odd ones out in the neighborhood. It was a more conservative town, and my mother also like painted our house kind of bright spring green, and all the houses on the block were like gray and brown, and my dad's metaphysical bookstore was around the corner. So it was a kind of quirky childhood, but I was always interested in theater. I loved theater. I loved poetry. I loved music. And so for many years, I pursued that. But at the same time, my father was always talking to me. It was like being bilingual in a way, because he would speak to me about astrology. And so eventually, when I was about 18 or 19 years old, I said, you know what? I really do want to learn this. And we took a long walk. We were on Block Island at the time, and we took a long walk, and he recorded a whole bunch of sort of introductory astrological information. And then later he took another walk by himself and another walk. And I had many, many recordings of introducing me to all the basics of astrology, which I still have, by the way. And that was how I really got going. And I've been an astrologer for over 20 years now, and a professional astrologer over 20 years now, but I've always blended astrology and my artistry, which is my super passionate place.
Gosh, so what a treasure to have those recordings. Such valuable information from your dad. Is he still around?
He is. He lives in Finland, and he's been a teacher his whole life, teaching astrology, esoteric psychology, teaches
I've
all
got
over the
to
world.
meet your dad.
He is a character.
You've got
he's
to meet
wizard
this
man.
Kelsey, does he not sound like freaking amazing?
Sounds like the next guest. We're going to run to your dad and pitch him.
Okay, so thank you, Dad, first of all, because I've been following you. Kelsey's been following you. We love what you're putting out and what you're putting into the world. And it's so important. It's always important, but I would even venture to say people that would never have noticed this sort of thing before are being attracted to this sort of thing, to astrology, to inner power, to empowerment, to crystals. I don't care. They're attracted to what is not being force fed to us, what is not being kind of programmed into us, and kind of asking more questions. So, call it what you want, waking up or whatever you want to call it. I just think people are so much more open to what we do. I'd say we, all of us, what we are doing on the planet. And I think it's just so cool. So thanks, Dad. And thank you, Heidi, for being here once again. What do you love to do the most in your work? What is your favorite thing?
Wow. Well,
I
I would,
know.
no, it's a great question. And I think, by the way, you are incredibly right. Like I've been doing this for many, many years. And I just think in the last even 3 to 4 years, the acceleration and the interest in astrology, in metaphysics is just exploding, and it's so wonderful to witness. The new generations are just so excited to get any information they can that will help them become the people they want to be, in the world. But I would say one of the things that I love most is that for the last 12 years, I've run retreats called the Radiant Life Retreats. And they started out just for women, but now they're for everyone. And it is a place where I blend astrology, poetry, embodiment, because I really feel like we have to understand these energies in our bodies, not just intellectually. And so we'll meet for like 5 days, and we will look at our charts, and we'll write, and we'll do deep counsel, and we'll do beautiful like therapeutic work around, I would say, getting through the fear and pain in our bodies and in our lives, and stepping into the fullness of who we can be and who we can become. So I think I've done now at least 24 retreats, and they are high points in my life.
Kelsey knows all about that.
Oh yeah. I never knew that I was going to host retreats, but I host a retreat called Radical Self-Love, and it's for women. So similar theme, and we do a lot of healing work, and we go to the beach in Mexico, and we just like hold each other, and it's always different.
Beautiful.
But like it's so cool to see people come together for like common intentionality and just be surrounded by like-minded people. Like it's really powerful to gather in person like that, I've found. So I
That
definitely
terrifies
feel
me.
you on how that would be like a high point in your career.
Yeah.
I
And
always
Kelsey,
say, go ahead.
I was just going to say to Kelsey, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about the Age of Aquarius, and that is part of the Age of Aquarius, is like
Yes.
groups coming
Yes.
together
Community.
on the level. Like it's not hierarchical. We're in a circle. Somebody steps to the center of the circle, offers their gift, steps back, somebody else steps forward. It's like group empowerment and group upliftment. And that's what we're seeing more and more, and will grow over the next many, 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 many years in the Age of Aquarius.
Yes. Okay. So great segue. So tell us everything else you know about it.
Let's just go.
I've been dying to
Let's
ask.
just dive in. Yeah. Well, every astrological age is around 2000 years. So we've been in the age of Pisces, and there's no exact beginning of the age. Astrologers have different opinions about it, but let's just say we're in the transition time. We are in the transition time into the Age of Aquarius. And Pisces was much more the God on high, the guru, the individual marching towards enlightenment.
Question.
And
yes. Is it or is it not around the same time that Christianity kind of blew up and took off?
Yes,
Boom.
exactly.
I had to point it out because I read about this and I was like, oh my gosh, this cannot be a coincidence.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, exactly. Pisces is deeply connected to Christianity, for sure. I mean, it's connected to many things, but yes. And so it is very much like the savior, the one on high, the God outside of us, the God, transcendent. Whereas with Aquarius, it's the God immanent. It's like within. And it is such a sign of, it's such an interesting sign because, as I said, it's all about group work and group creativity and coming together to lift one another. But it's also a really technologically savvy sign, right? And it's a very scientific sign, and it's an impersonal sign. So we're learning how to love one another impersonally. Do you know, in other words, it's not like you're mine, nobody else can have you. We're learning to love one another. We maybe not like one another, but we're learning to love one another. And that is part of the signature of the Aquarian age as well.
Wow. This is cool. So I don't know how much I already shared on the recording that's going to be aired, but my boyfriend and I we have a lot of Aquarius in our chart. So we're all about like Age of Aquarius, super excited, community oriented, trying to bring people together, empower them, uplift them. And my boyfriend is like obsessed with this idea of creating like a small utopian society of like small groups of people and yada, yada, which I think is very Age of Aquarius of him. And I just been like dying to get an astrologer on the show to talk about this. And literally like every Saturday I wake up to the Age of Aquarius song blasting in my house. And Jeff is like waving his arms, dancing around. I come down, make breakfast. And we literally party like to this concept on a weekly basis. So that just gives some context to the listeners out there, how like stoked we are that we're leading into this time. But what are some other like big differences between where we've been and where we're going?
Well, what's kind of cool is part of what's very exciting about this time, even last year and this year, even though, we've been in the middle of a gigantic crisis, two planets have been in the sign of Aquarius. Saturn has been in the sign of Aquarius and Jupiter has been in the sign of Aquarius. So for all you Aquarians, you are really undergoing huge growth and huge transformation. And we could say that the age of Aquarius is being sort of amplified right now. So for example, with Jupiter in Aquarius, it only lands there once every 12 years. Okay. So every 12 years, we have a chance to amp it up, to grow community. And so right now we're in a time when we are meant to be figuring out how to grow community, even with all these tests, even as we're separate from one another, even as we're feeling socially awkward and certain old dynamics are ending. Like if ever there was a time that old relationship dynamics are ending and new ways of coming together to create together are forming, it's like right now. And so when we look at the Age of Aquarius, these 2 years are pivotal as it gets underway. Yeah. There's a beautiful phrase for Aquarius. It says, "Water of life am I, poured forth for those who thirst." So Aquarius is the water bearer that brings its water, which is information, which is love, which is sustenance, and it learns how to share it. And we all are meant to become Aquarian water bearers, where we give our gifts on behalf of humanity. Like we have to fall in love with the idea of humanity, our fellow brothers and sisters. Right now, we all hate each other. Do you know? It's like there's a huge polarity. So
like, how are we different versus how are we the same?
Yeah. And in the Age of Aquarius, we have to find the way to find that impersonal love so that we can uplift one another. And so it's very much about how do we give our gifts for the benefit of the whole, and how do we decentralize ourselves? Like how do we get less obsessed with our own little lives and more obsessed with our community lives and our humanitarian lives?
Yeah.
This makes a lot of sense.
It definitely does. I read that the Age of Aquarius began in 2012 with the end of the Mayan calendar. Like instead of the world ending, it's just like that age was ending. Also, I had my Aquarius sun the same year, 2012. So I was like, oh my God, what's going on? It's so crazy. But like, what do you say about like, I don't know what you know or what you don't know about the Mayan calendar, but that's what I read. So what do you know about that?
Yeah, I would just say that there are a lot of
there's a lot of different opinions
about, and
maybe they just ran out of stone and that's why it ended in 2012. They just ran out of room.
But if you think about the fact that an age is approximately 2,000 years, 2,000 to 2,500 years, you have to realize that it's no specific moment. It's this gradual ushering in of a whole new way of being.
It's so funny. The margin of error is 500 years, you guys. We are really just a freaking speck.
Yeah, no, it's so true. When you start to really get perspective. Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts.
That's really funny. So I also wanted to ask you a little bit about 2022, more immediate future, not like 2,000 years in the making. What are some themes or lessons or like energies happening next year, do you think, since we're so close and we're going into that? Like, what are some helpful tidbits you can give the peeps so we can prepare and ride the wave?
Well, the first thing I want to say, not everybody, more and more people know something beyond their sun sign, but maybe some of your listeners don't yet know how important it is to know your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. Those are your three primary energies. So whatever I say to you about this upcoming year, if you don't know, for example, that you're Pisces rising, you might not know just how significant this year is going to be for you, you know? So
Mm.
that's the first thing I would say to you is it's so important as you look to the astrology of the coming year to say to yourself, well, what are my primary energies in my chart? So I can see how my blueprint, this design is affected, right? So one of the huge things that's happening at the very end of this year is that Jupiter is moving into Pisces. It already dipped into Pisces in the spring and early summer, just for a tiny bit, but now it will officially move into Pisces. It's been in Aquarius, like I said, and Pisces is a sign of great sensitivity, and it's a sign of great artistry and love. And so the most beautiful part of this is music, film, photography, like all the arts are going to get like this rich dose of this Jupiter in Pisces time. I suppose the dangerous part of Jupiter in Pisces is like the ocean. So things spread, you know, like we don't want this to continue in terms of the coronavirus, but it's like that could be a possibility that we run into another glitch around that as the year gets underway. But the most important thing I think is that Jupiter in Pisces has us working together and with more compassion. I mean, and more artistry. I think we've been a little bit starved in terms of artistry in person, you know, and like, I think we're ready for a real wave of like all the people going to concerts now, right? And just needing that sustenance. So Jupiter in Pisces is a big, big deal, big feelings, big artistry. Also, we're at a time when we have eclipses in Taurus and in Scorpio all year long, eclipses. So if you have strong Taurus or strong Scorpio or strong Leo or strong Aquarius, these eclipses are really affecting you. And it's going to go all year long and into 2023 as well. And it has a lot to do with your values and what you truly desire and what you no longer desire. And it also has a lot to do with our financial lives as well, particularly if you're in those signs, and getting clear about where we want to invest our money, where we want to invest so that we can grow what's beautiful in our lives. So those are a couple things that are going on. Saturn continues to stay in Aquarius, right? So it continues to test us in terms of our groups and our social gatherings, but it maybe starts to help us get mature. It maybe starts to help us mature a little bit in the realm of how we're treating one another in groups and how we're building groups that could last. Yeah.
What if you're an introvert and groups really freak you out?
Right. So that's a great question. I mean, I think we all have to find the way. Look, there's groups that are outside of us, and then there are groups that you can tune in with inwardly. So if you're truly an introvert and you truly don't want to be in the room with people, then guess what? You close your eyes and you connect with all people of goodwill, and once, you know what I mean? Like you connect with your inner group. You don't have to always be in the room, you know?
That like we have a community here, High Vibing It peeps, who maybe you're not like outwardly talking to each other or all coming to the retreat, but you're all listening to the same information, probably having similar thoughts, valuing similar things. So like there are other people out there like you. And I know
like that.
Something that really used to help me when I was feeling so isolated. Before, I used to always like notice how different I was from everyone, because I don't know, Aquarians are a lot about like, oh, I'm so unique, blah, blah, blah. But once I got over that, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of causing me like detriment because I feel alone and isolated and misunderstood. So then I just changed the question to, well, how am I the same as other people? And when you start asking yourself that, you can feel so connected to everybody around you, even your Uncle Joe, who's on the opposite side of the political spectrum, even that person who ran you off the side of the road. Everyone becomes something that you have something in common with, and you just can really cultivate that sense of humanity and community, and we're all the same to a degree, like at the base level. And I think that brings me like solace and peace, and
you get all the benefits.
So important.
Yeah. All the benefits of community without the energy drain, which truly probably just comes from lack of energetic boundaries, you know, because when you set those in place, if you're able to do that, it can be a world of difference.
Or is there a possibility that you feel drained by people because you've been in groups of the wrong people who weren't your people?
Well, no, because I get that with my kids too. So I don't think that's true.
Well, kids
My-
are needy. I mean, like adult people your age.
You know, real quick. My husband said something, of course, so profound, Abel, shout out. But he was listening to this podcast and he goes, I've never thought about this before, because he's a huge extrovert. He loves being around people. He loves his waiter job. He's not a waiter anymore, but he looks back and is like, I miss that. What are you talking about? Anyway, he likes that stuff. He loves being around people and going out, and I do not. I love to have a book or a TV show and be in a blanket. Like, that's all I want to do for the rest of my life. He said something that really made me think about it differently. He goes, he heard that introverts, or rather extroverts, have used their social interactions as like coins coming to them, like money payment to them. It fills them up. Whereas introverts see that those same interactions as like spending their coins, and you only have a certain amount of coins per day. And he goes, and I really realized, he goes, I understood now, like how you feel at the end of the day when you're doing your podcast or when you have a full day of clients. And it's like, I love to do these things, but I can't deny, like when I'm done, I'm like, I got nothing left. Do not ask me about dinner. Don't talk to me. I need a minute to just like refill and recharge. And he goes, he kind of got that extra level of understanding. And I myself, feeling that way, never heard it back to me that way. So it really made a lot of sense. Like, oh yeah, I'm spending money right now, but it's cool. It's fun. I like being with you guys. But yeah, it did make me think differently. But you're right. I think being around the right people can definitely have a huge impact on that community aspect as well. If you don't have the right people, or if you're not being supported in your vision and your dream and who you actually are, then that should be first step. Find people that mirror you and that can support you and lift you up, because you need it. Everyone needs it.
Yeah, Kelsey, I liked also what you said about, I mean, like on this theme, it's Aquarius people can feel really the odd one out. They can feel like the lone wolf. They can feel like one of these things is not like the other. Where do I belong? And it can take a substantial chunk of the life to really find your tribe, find your people, find the sweet spot,
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's enormously important to do this practice. Like you said, how am I the same? And in fact, my father once said that he would every time he was in an airport, he would sit in the airport and he would look around at each person. And as a practice, he would just say, same, same.
Oh my gosh.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything in you goes like, well, no, but I'm not the same. Look at all this whole list, but just stay with the person until you can get into a heartful space of sameness, and that is our practice for forever, forever.
Mine's a little different, but I do actually do something like this. I don't say same, but I do say like, let me just step into being this person's family. Let me just step into being their sister or their daughter or their parent. And let me just see how my feelings change. And instantly they change. If I picture that stranger as my sister, I'm like, okay, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I love you. I do. Because my sister does all kinds of crap that I don't agree with, but I love her. At her core, I deeply, deeply love her. And I think if we could just say same, or what if I was their sister? What if I was their brother? How would I feel differently? You will feel different. You're not going to agree with everyone. You don't have to. We're not here to agree with everyone, but you are here to see how you're the same, and you are here to love everybody regardless of their personal journey, Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It works, guys. It just works.
And if more of us would do this more of the time, it'd be easier transition into the new era where we're not all hating each other and fighting each other and invalidating each other's perspectives and making people wrong for being different and blah, blah, blah. Like, people are so polarized. I'm so tired of it, as you can probably
very passionate about this.
Because I'm a humanitarian and it bothers me to see my brothers and sisters going at each other's throats. And I'm like, get it together, people. Like, we can do better.
One of the tricky things about Aquarius is that it is a fixed sign. So not everyone who's an Aquarius is an evolved humanitarian. There are Aquarians that are very fixed. In fact, if you think about Aquarius and how it rules groups, if you get a group headed in the wrong direction under the age of Aquarius, then we're in trouble. I mean, honestly, World War II, the whole uprising of the Nazis, that was Aquarius as well, because it was a group formed around an ideal. So we have to have the right ideals and the right visions in place. Like you're naming, Kelsey, it's like, these are the places that we're headed to, and we have to do it together, and we have to do so in love. Right. But every sign has its tricky parts and it has its most beautiful parts, but one of the tricky parts is its fixity, because you can be out there like, I am breaking every rule, or you can be, like, I refuse, I'm alone in my opinions and nobody's going to change me. Right.
Kind of stubborn.
Also, side note, I feel like we bring up Hitler a lot on this show.
Do you?
It's just an extreme example.
It's mostly me, because when we talk about like how there's a higher perspective for everything, and there's always if you zoom out, you can see like how it's progressing and whatever. And I don't know why, it just always pops in my brain. Like, well, what about Hitler?
Well, you know what? I often use that. I often use him in the terms of like, when people say, well, can you know from a chart? Can you know from a chart like that this would be an evil person? Right. And actually you can't.
Yeah.
You can see.
You don't know if like the good or the bad will manifest from that sign. Right.
And free will is still a thing.
Yes. And you don't know the level of the soul that's engaging with this chart. You don't know whether they are a selfish being. You don't know whether they're here to encourage or uplift, so you don't know from just looking at the chart.
Ooh, that's so juicy.
It is. I like that.
So here's my next question. I think this is a good segue. So for the people like before, I'm going to rewind a little bit. When you were saying, if you don't know like your top 3 energies in your chart, your rising, your moon, and your sun, because most people know their sun sign as like, I'm an Aquarius, I'm a Scorpio, I'm a whatever. First of all, where can people find that? Because I know there's many places to do it easily. And then what are the other important things that people should look at or pay attention to in their chart so they can get the most benefit from it?
Yeah. So it's getting so much easier now just to get your chart online. So it's astro.com or cafeastrology.com. Also on my website, HeidiRose.com, you can order a sun, moon, and rising snapshot. So there's an audio, like a 10-minute audio recording about your sun, moon, and rising. Ooh, cool. So it's much easier now to just get your chart and the positions. And
I'm not going to lie, I Googled it while you were talking and I got all of mine, because I forget every time what my moon sign is. I never remember my moon. Incidentally, it is Pisces.
I was going to ask you earlier, you must have water. You must have Cancer or Pisces, because everything you said about introversion and needing solitude, that's Cancer or Pisces.
Yeah. Is moon important? I mean, you said it was.
Yeah. It's enormously important. It's
moon
enormously
is Pisces.
important.
So my sun is Aries. So I'm always like, here, listen to my idea. And then I go hide. And I'm like, let me do the thing. And then I go hide again.
Exactly.
So like, that's how I feel most of the time.
Well, and the thing with the moon, so let's just say a few things about this sun, moon, and rising. The moon is our past. It's our childhood. It's our emotional go-to. It's what we do without thinking about it. It's how we feel safe. So a moon in Pisces would feel safe, bundled up in her blanket alone and a little invisible, though she's artistic and dreamy and intuitive and deeply feeling. She would feel the safest that way. And yet here you are in Aries. Our sun sign is our personality self. It's our doing self. It's the self that we will most probably manifest. So, to have the water past and then the fiery Aries as your personality, those are very, very different. The rising sign has to do with where you're headed. What energy are you apprenticing to? What are you cultivating in your life? What are you here to learn? What are you here to embody and give? The rising sign is everything. The rising sign is more important than your sun sign.
Do we have the same rising sign,
Very
Kelsey?
cool.
Do we? I thought we did, but then I thought you said we didn't. What is yours?
I think so. So, okay, so I'm going to ask a personal question and then you'll know what mine is. So what do you say to people who have the same rising and moon sign?
I love it. Because it means that you're here to grow the energy of that sign. And you just said yourself, you articulated the journey, because an Aquarius moon at first feels like I'm the odd one out. I don't know where I belong, or I'm a total rebel and I'm being rebellious for rebellion's sake. But an Aquarius rising says, I'm here to be with you. I'm here to be the water bearer. I'm here to grow community. So it's about the evolution of the sign. So you signed up for the whole journey of Aquarius. You signed up to, yeah. So when you have the moon and the rising sign, it's a pretty cool combo. Yeah.
Well, actually, my moon and rising is Cancer. My sun sign is Aquarius. So, Lindsay, to answer your question, I'm Cancer.
Okay, well, then let me take it back and let me say this. The moon in Cancer and Cancer rising, that's fascinating because the moon in Cancer is, see, you guys both have water moons, right? That's one of your rapport things, right? And a Cancer moon has its own intense vulnerability where it's like, it needs to feel protected and it needs to feel like, don't hurt me. And if you hurt me, guess what? You're never coming near me again, right?
Goodbye forever.
Yeah. So the Cancer moon is, and it's very maternal. It wants to, and it doesn't mean that you have to have your own kids. It just means that you need to take care of something or someone. Then the Cancer rising is about the human family, because Cancer is all about family. And so is it your own little tribe that you're taking care of it? Or are you taking care of like are your arms wide? Are you embracing? Are you including all? So, I mean, in your chart, it's really interesting because Cancer and Aquarius are radically different energies. Right. Cancer has to do with the past. Aquarius has to do with the future.
Wow.
Your Aquarius helps you break with the past of the Cancer so that you can move towards a new, more inclusive Cancerian future.
You nailed it. Yeah. Well, if anyone's been listening to this podcast, I basically just was like, my brothers and sisters, humanity, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's pretty obvious now that we spell it out. Oh, yeah. And Lindsay, I think you were nodding your head in agreement of
I mean, she nailed us. She nailed it for both of us. My childhood, that's exactly how I didn't have the strong, let me just say, but it does make sense that like, that's what I would go back to, just needing to feel safe or, cozy, whatever. Now, my rising Sagittarius, tell me, what does that mean?
Sagittarius is a fire sign. And so
fire. So is Aries. That's right.
You're calling in fire. You're calling in fire. And Sagittarius, its phrase is, I see the goal, I reach the goal, and then I see another. So it might be born into—
Feels so powerful.
It is very powerful because Sagittarians are here to teach, they're here to mentor, and they're here to help broaden horizons. And you start out by taking off your own blinders, and you start out by going like, oh my God, there's a bigger world than I thought, And so, Sagittarius rising people are here to uplift, inspire, encourage, be the world travelers, be the world philosophers. They're really often like glass is half full and we can do this, and there can be a resilience to it. Now, is that different than Pisces? Yes, it is, because Pisces can feel collapsed and can feel hopeless and can feel exhausted. But Sagittarius is like, get on your horse and ride. We are going for it. Like,
yes. Yeah, that makes total sense. Leonardo DiCaprio once said, God, I have the best little snippets, don't I? Leonardo DiCaprio once said he could not imagine dying before seeing every inch of the planet. And I was a kid when I heard him say, I was like a teenager, 14, 15. And I was like, oh my God, like I've never forgot that. And I've kind of adopted it as like my own thing, because I am very much like, I want to live here. I want to go here. I want to visit here. I want to stay here. I'm very much a traveler in that sense. And I'd like to think that I am a teacher. I definitely feel like I came here to do that and to help people kind of, as you said, take their blinders off. Very, very, very good. And just off the top of her head, Kelsey, like look at her nailing us. She's like right off the top of her head.
What could you expect anything
This is
less?
why so many people revere you and just love you. I definitely can see it.
Heidi, now I'm curious, what are your—
I was gonna ask that.
3? I gotta know.
So I'm an Aries as well.
Yeah.
And yes, and I have Leo rising, which is another fire sign. But I have a Capricorn moon, and the Capricorn moon is very grounding for the fire. And given that I do this metaphysical work and I'm an astrologer, I always talk about how it has to be grounded and there has to be a bridge between the high and the low. And if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it in a really concrete, tangible way, So that's the Capricorn moon part. That's just like, I don't want to get too too far out there. I want it to make sense. I want it to be applicable. I want us to be able to plan our lives based on knowing who we are in the world and give our gifts.
Yeah, you do strike me as a grounded lady. I always like really just cherish and value grounded people, because I personally feel like I'm never grounded, because I'm either like floating in this like in the seas of my emotions, or like floating in outer space in my ideas. So I feel like I'm literally like never grounded ever. So I'm just like, oh, what it would be like to be a grounded person. But the best I can do is just hang out with grounded people.
Well, and that's what's interesting, like Cancer and Capricorn are opposite each other. So Cancer is the great fluid mama who feels everything, and Capricorn is the structured father energy. So Capricorn would feel good to a Cancer because it's like, oh, I can rest in this. Just like Cancer would feel good to a Capricorn because it would allow the Capricorn to be a little less guarded or a little less, in control of everything. It would help them get a little mushier and softer.
Oh, that's me and my mom, because my mom is a Capricorn. So the way you described that, I was like, oh yeah, that feels true for sure.
I love that.
I love that too. So I had like a technical question about why the moon, the rising, and the sun are the most like power players in our chart. What about all the other planets when we were born? Why do those matter less?
Well, they're enormously important. They're enormously important as well. But if you think about the Earth, if you think about our Earth, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're standing on our Earth, the sun is shining on our Earth and we would all die without it, right? So obviously it's the center of everything. And the moon is is right there with us in Earth. So those three are they're always having a conversation. And so as a little person born on the Earth, the Earth, the sun, and the moon are the closest conversations. But of course, it's enormously important. Where's your Mercury? Where's your Venus? How do you love in the world? Where's your Mars? What are you willing to fight for? Where's your Mercury? How do you communicate? You need to know every voice in the choir to really know the song that you're going to be singing.
Beautiful
what a beautiful metaphor. I love that.
Hey there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.